Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of Craig Houston Talks 2 podcast, and my guest this week is going to be talking about some issues that they personally faced with the SNP. They approached the SNP with some serious allegations and were treated pretty poorly, and it ended up in the hands of the police. So it's all revolves around asking questions, quite legitimate questions about money taken in by the party and what happened to it. And how that story evolved is quite shocking, to be perfectly honest with you. So, no further ado, I'll introduce my guest today. It's Shannon Donoghue. Shannon, how are you?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Now, see, before we go into the story itself, what happened when you made these, raised a complaint, asking some queries. Before we get to that, could you just maybe give us a wee rundown about who you are, your involvement with the SNP at the time, and how things were before we got to this point where you felt that you had to ask some serious questions about the SNP?
Okay. I joined the SNP, I think, in 2012. My mum was quite involved with the SNP. She became a councillor for her local area in 2012 until 2015, where she stood for Westminster. In 2015, she became the MP for the area. And then my partner was also quite involved in stuff like that. So we've always, as a family, we've been really involved in politics for the last kind of 10 plus years, campaigning most weekends. We've all kind of held office bearer positions and stuff like that within the party. And yeah, that's pretty much my involvement with politics, the SNP.
Yeah, so you're more than an activist, more than a member.
Yeah.
Obviously with your mum and your partner's involvement at a higher level, and obviously your mum being an MP and your partner getting an office as well through the local government.
Chris he's a councillor for South Ayrshire, yeah.
And he was the SNP as well.
Yeah.
So I can imagine the topic of conversation most of your life would be evolved around politics, and then
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think for the last kind of 10, referendum, I wasn't really involved in politics up until the referendum, and actually I was more no at the beginning.
Wow.
I was actually more no at the beginning of the referendum campaign. I only switched, I would say, probably within the last kind of couple of weeks to the month of the referendum actually taking place, yeah. I was very no. Despite my mum running the yes campaign in South Ayrshire, yeah, I was no. So I was kind of late in terms of switching to the camp and getting involved in the yes campaign. But that's certainly what kicked off me being involved in politics and me getting more involved.
Well, that's intriguing. That's something we never spoke about before we hit record. So that's another sort of aspect to it, which is quite fascinating. We'll get a chat about that off camera. That's an interesting story. So you started getting questions in your own mind about the party, and particularly at the local level. When and how did that come about? How did you become like not as supportive and starting to hold them to task and to take the task rather on certain points?
Locally, I think from a national level, what I would say is that there was certainly things that were kind of coming down, or you maybe saw on Twitter or social media or something like that, where maybe somebody would make a complaint to headquarters about something about behaviour or something like that, and it wouldn't be actioned. So that was kind of becoming a reoccurring issue that was happening on a kind of national level. There was a lot of members weren't happy, complaints weren't being dealt with. And it doesn't matter what the complaint was, it just wasn't getting filtered through. On a local level, what I would say is, for me, there was like a small group of members, to maybe 10 to 15 locally, who their behaviour was appalling in terms of very personal attacks towards my mum running and the kind of internal selection processes, etc. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And headquarters never done anything about it. So it was always kind of, you were banging your head off a brick wall continually. You were trying to stay in the party to fix what was broken inside, but you were getting absolutely nowhere doing so.
So back to what you're saying there about your mum, internal selection process, was she involved in the selection of candidates, or the fact that she was getting?
No, so when she ran for, she was obviously an MP from 2015. She lost her seat in 2017. She then ran again in 2019. And then that was an internal selection process, because obviously somebody else had put their name forward at that time to run, so that went to the members to vote who their candidate was going to be, basically. And I can only describe that internal selection process as absolutely vile. The tactics and the behaviour and the smearing would be something you would expect from your opposition, not something that you would expect from inside your own party.
And this is before the campaign's actually started. This is just...
Yeah, that just to see who's going to stand. Yeah. I mean, there was like this group of members were going round all the other members and having, because obviously other members have now came and since spoke to us and told us what was being said and whatnot. They would go for coffee and say stuff and just put wee things in people's heads and whatever. And the hustings, there was quite a few hustings happened that selection process, and it was absolutely vile.
And was your mum successful in that?
No.
Right,
no.
So that's right.
It was somebody else that got selected to then became the MP.
This is just opinion, obviously, because we can't talk factually on this, but do you feel that at that point there was maybe people further up the chain that were trying to decide what was happening at local level, or what was causing the...
No, but I think further up the chain they were completely turning a blind eye to it. I think my mum has always been, a lot of people, this group of people like to question her integrity, which I find quite funny, actually, because my mum's probably one of the most, like, she's a person with integrity. She has got the morals, and she doesn't budge on her morals. She's quite firm with her morals. And my mum can't be bought and she can't be sold. And she can't be... She'll not remain silent for something just for a cause if it's not right. And I think higher up, in terms of when she was an MP and stuff like that, I think people seen that in her. And I genuinely do think that she was always seen as a bit of a threat, in terms of she wouldn't just be silent if there was something going on.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think it's easy for me to give an opinion on that as an outsider of the SNP and somebody who evidently doesn't like them or never have been a fan, I've felt that it was a party that if you didn't toe the party line, then you weren't wanted. And I've seen that from the outside.
Very much so. Yeah. Very much so.
So when you start here...
But it didn't used to be like... It didn't always be like that. And, I go back to the kind of... when I first started within the SNP, and actually it sounds really quite cheesy, but a bit cringe. But I remember my mum's campaign in 2015 when we were campaigning to get her elected as an MP. That campaign is one of the most memorable campaigns ever. Like, I had some of the best times of my life in that campaign. Just the atmosphere, the buzz about it all. It was like one big... It was like your friends and family, and it was actually just really, really nice. It was a really nice environment to be in. I really enjoyed that campaign. And just, I think slowly that just completely changed. It just changed.
So that's a bit of background. Obviously, you were, a happy SNP member, and activist, I heard word.
Yeah.
Your partner, happy SNP councillor, and your mum at one point a happy SNP MP.
Yep.
So, when did the wheels start falling off it for you, and you thinking, hold on, this isn't right, and then you've obviously took the next step with your complaint on financial discrepancies, I think?
So there was a few things, and as I say, I think just this group's behaviour in terms of what they were saying, what they were doing, it was really affecting our lives. Like, it wasn't just silly wee comments on social media. It was life-changing stuff. They were really going on about my mum's integrity, her honesty. They were bringing up her election expenses, really, really questioning her and damaging her reputation. So as that kind of went on, and let's face it, it wasn't just happening down here. That was happening, across. We were hearing of a lot of SNP members that were not happy with how certain people were getting treated within the party because they were maybe asking questions or they weren't agreeing with something, and it wasn't even anything that was like you were majorly asking something that was like completely, quite out there and explosive. It was maybe just that you disagreed with something. You're like, well, why are we doing that? Could we maybe do it? Do you know what I mean? But it was totally, you were like, you were like totally like shut down. Like, how dare you ask questions? And I think for me, with that group and what was kind of happening and going on, I was like, right, okay, we kind of need to watch our backs here a wee bit. That's how I genuinely felt. I was like, so at that point in time, I started putting everything in writing. I actually started recording all the meetings and stuff like that, which is actually quite a sneaky thing to do. And it's not really something that I would usually do, but I genuinely was concerned about what these people were capable of doing and what they were capable of saying about my family. Yeah. That I was like, no, we need to protect ourselves here.
So just so we can understand the chronological order of this, is this after your mum's had some sort of accusations and stuff flung at her and you thought, well, okay, I'm going to now be doing things and I want to protect myself. So I think that's quite a logical step.
Yeah, it's very difficult as a family member. I've always said this, my family's quite involved in politics, and although I'm involved in politics to a certain extent, I've never been elected. But my life changed completely when my mum got elected and when my partner got elected. And sometimes it's like, I don't think people appreciate what that has, like, how that is on family members. It's very difficult as a family member to sit back and watch somebody that you love and somebody that is actually just doing their best and not being anything that they're being accused of doing on social media, being absolutely slaughtered. That's very difficult as a family member not to retaliate and react to that.
And is this your mum you're talking to?
Yeah, even my partner as well.
You got it. Yeah. Well, I think there's something that I've just stumbled upon. We spoke, off camera and we spoke on the phone last week at great length, and we just stumbled up that you were a no voter before the referendum and then switched, right? Mm-hmm. That might be insignificant, but I think it's very important to what we're going to talk about next. I'll explain to you why. People who want to ignore what you're about to talk about, people that want to slaughter what you're about to talk about, people that want to work against you, could quite easily say, that just started, it's a lot of nonsense, and it only started when her mother was no longer the SNP candidate, right? Now, I can understand people taking that view. Mm-hmm. However, and she's just doing what her mum wants, I think we've just stumbled in something that suggests the complete opposite, that although you are concerned about your mother's situation and were upset by it, the fact that you were I don't know if we use the word unionist because it would upset your mum. I'm sure she would be on the phone to me. But you were prepared to vote no, which means you're not just led by your mum and that's my mum and I'm just going to follow my mum.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's really important about my mum. My mum brought us up as a single parent. My dad wasn't around. It was me, my mum and my brother. And she didn't have the easiest of lives, my mum. As I said, she was a single mum. She struggled to make ends meet at times and whatever. But I think she done a really good job of raising us in terms of ask questions. Don't always take what you see for as what it is. And debate. And that's always what we have done as a family. And as I say, I was very much towards the no side of that referendum up until kind of the last kick, if you like. So it wasn't like she completely pushed her politics down my throat and it was like, you have to vote yes. And that wasn't the case.
That's quite fascinating actually, because I know your mum through talking to her, just people don't understand, I spent a bit of time talking to your mum just before she left your house.
Yeah.
And I think she's quite a character, to be honest with you, and I think that's testimony to you and her, that you were allowed your difference of opinion. Your mum's quite actively involved in a campaign trying to gain independence for Scotland.
Yeah.
And for the majority of that campaign, you're like, I'm going to vote no, right? And your mum's obviously campaigning, because people could be watching this week's finale. We're just before the the upcoming election, and she's a wee campaigning. She's the type of character that I wouldn't mind talking to after the elections campaigning's done, because it was quite good fun getting a chat with her. So at this point, where do you start having these concerns, which are financial concerns, on the local party group? Is that correct? It's not national at this point. Your concerns are based on the local SNP group, is that right?
Yeah, so what had happened was this kind of group of people that, as I say, was like kind of causing a bit of bother within the SNP locally. They'd all kind of managed to get themselves in positions of office bearer positions, if you like, and then the 2021 selection process came for Holyrood and stuff like that. So then obviously the candidate was put in place. The candidate's team was then put in place. Obviously the candidate picks who her core team is going to be, like any election. And just from then, if we're kind of going back a wee bit, so between the 2019 campaign, where there was kind of stuff with the election that, as we were seeing, as it was kind of going up on social media, or like, well, that's kind of not right. That's not. There was just certain things that were like, right, okay, and then
What sort of things, Shannon?
So they were just putting stuff. So anything that they were maybe putting, there was maybe certain things that were going out that didn't have an imprint on it. For example,
What does that mean?
So in an election period, any material that you put out, absolutely anything has to have an imprint on it. That imprint has to have, like, promoted by whoever your election agent is, for, the candidate, and an address, and it has to be on every bit of material that goes out.
That's even on social media stuff, isn't it? If you look at,
it's got quite strict within the last kind of year and a half, 2 years, but it's now got to be on every social media post, even out with an election period. Anybody elected or anything like that has to have that imprint on their social media.
Yeah, because I've noticed that a lot of politicians now, it's on their bio of their maybe Twitter feed and stuff, name and address and thing. Okay, so what happens next?
So with that, there was like emails obviously coming out to like get donations in for the campaign. So like as part of the CA member, there was like emails coming out, and basically the first serious alarm bell for me is that we were to donate to the election agent, and it was a personal bank account. It wasn't the CA bank account that was set up.
And right, and that's a big alarm bell for you. Now, as somebody who's not been involved with any party, political party ever in my life, and not been involved in election campaigns, the normal, I would take it, the SNP, each sort of branch or local level, however they determine it, would have a bank account.
Yeah, so like the SNP used to be made up, I think it was 7 branches within South Ayrshire, if I'm correct, can't remember. And then within that you would have your Holyrood Constituency Association, which was known as your CAs, and then you would also have your Westminster Constituency Associations. So each branch would have a personal, each branch would have a bank account, which would have your 2 signatories, obviously, to make sure that it was always being signed off by 2 people, any transaction. Same with the CA, and same with your Westminster campaign. So there was always bank accounts for that. So the CA had an up and running bank account with 2 signatories on it. So why weren't we using that?
Mm-hmm. So at this point, we've got 2 concerns. One is there's literature, materials being used improperly because they've not got the, as you call it, an imprint, which is a set of mandatory details that they must, and the fact that you've been asked via email to make donations to a third party. I take it wasn't the candidate's bank account, but someone running their campaign.
It was election agent.
The personal bank account.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised you got concerned just with those 2 things. I mean, the imprint thing to me as a normal member of the public, I would never notice that. But if somebody sent me...
But I think this is where we need to do better in terms of even with the Electoral Commission and stuff like that. Because when you, because like I reported stuff as at the time when I saw it, to basically say, this doesn't have a proper imprint on it. Like what, and very, very rarely was anything done about it.
Sorry, and who are you reporting this to? The local?
Yeah. You report it to the Electoral Commission, and then I think that there's also you would report it to, I think there's somebody within the local authority that you would like ring up and basically be like, look, there's graphics out or whatever that doesn't have an imprint on it. And I don't know, I think I'm very much one, I think this is where I get quite annoyed in terms of where my mum was slaughtered and with her expenses and whatever, because it was something that we were always very careful with, and we always done it right.
Just so the people who've been watching this and don't know the story of your mum, there was accusations against your mum, which was total nonsense because nobody actually made a complaint.
Yeah.
But there was people suggesting that there was complaints about your mum's, and that in itself, when you hear irregularities with expenses, MP, that always gets a trigger. Yeah. But when you actually deep dive it, there was no. The House of Commons have given your mum, I've seen it, a written letter saying we've not had any, even making accusations or wanting anything looked at. But the suggestion itself is always going to look bad on an MP.
And we actually laugh about it because my mum made the front pages of the local paper here with her expenses, her election expenses in 2015, because she'd put in her election expenses like crisps and lollipops. And that I think that's just an example. My mum, everything is very right to the and actually she got slaughtered for it. She got absolutely slaughtered for it. Oh my, like, you know, we were front page of the paper. I think it's a door. We were just absolutely slaughtered for this.
I think that's a pretty bizarre story. It must have been funny reading that, but that gives a good sort of starting point of where you guys are, that if you're going to be dealing with other people's money, then if you buy a lollipop and it's only 3 pence and you've got 100 of them, then you've got...
Well, the way we looked at it is like when you're in that, so the minute you're announced as a candidate, you have to account for absolutely everything, whether you're in your short campaign or your long campaign. So you've got, while you're doing your expenses, you've got your short campaign expenses and your long campaign expenses. And when at that point in time, we were in an office like constantly, and you know, we were supplying like people with some crisps and whatever to eat while we were doing telephone canvassing. So of course we were going to declare it. But as I say, it ended up front page of the paper, and it was just like, she got absolutely slaughtered for it.
Aye, but it gives folk an indication in how these things should be done. So you've got these imprint things, you've got this thing with the bank. That just beggars belief to me. I just can't see how anybody would leave themselves so exposed at that point, because I run a kids' football team as a volunteer, and although I'm the chairman and founder of it, I'm leaving a signature in the bank account. I don't have access to bank accounts. Somebody wants to give me cash, I say, no, I'm going to just send it to the account.
I mean, see, even if there was nothing dodgy going on, it's bad practice.
That's what I'm saying. That in itself is just idiotic. When it's not like, let's say it was a brand new, let's say tomorrow, I know it's time barred now, but let's say tomorrow I decided, click a finger, I'm going to stand for Westminster. I might not have a campaign bank account as an independent, but I could go and get one. So even for a short term, but we're talking about a party that celebrated its 90th birthday not so long ago. So to suggest that, and you know fine well that there was bank accounts there, that's scary. So was there anything else that caught your attention before you actually took the next step, and that was to complain about it? What happens next?
So as a party member, obviously, we had an EGM for the CA. And in that, each branch had to do a report. And I just happened to be my branch secretary, so it was me that was writing the report. Although it didn't necessarily just come from me. And I think that's important to mention, because these people like to think that, and like to make out that it was me causing trouble and I was just this aggressive psycho, was what I was called. There was a number of members within my branch that was raising the same concerns. These concerns were raised as a branch. It was signed off by our branch to be like, well, wait a wee minute here, we've got some questions here that we want answered. So with the AGM, we were asked to write a report. So within that report, we just kind of asked serious, like obviously our concerns with regards to the bank accounts that were being used, and when the members were going to be able to have access to that bank account to see what the donations were within that campaign. And it was very clear from there on in that we were up against it, because we were getting blocked at every opportunity.
That's interesting. So, and is the actual campaign finished at this point? Is the campaign?
Yes, so it was finished.
So the election's finished, and that's interesting that it wasn't Shannon making a complaint. No. It was the branch, and you've got a committee in that branch. It was them as a as an entity that are asking the questions.
And actually, when we put that report out, so the AGM was scheduled, the report went out, and the AGM got cancelled. And it was like, and actually, they actually tried to turn it on Chris, my partner, he was a counsellor, obviously, so he was a counsellor within the SNP branch. They tried to and then there was an email went out to, they put an email out to all the members, because like they had obviously access to the system to be able to do that completely, basically saying that the AGM was cancelled because of Chris, and it was just another tactic to.
But what justification did they have to postpone it? What excuses did they give about Chris?
It was because a report. It was because of the report that he authorised and he allowed.
Right, because he's part of the same committee that you are that have asked this question to say, look, what's going on here?
Yes.
So they've decided to delay, postpone whatever the AGM, and that's a branch level AGM.
That was a CA,
which is slightly bigger. So you've got branches which are more local than the constituency association, right? Okay, so they've stopped the whole constituency association thing because of this, and that would obviously stop them having to deal with it in a public forum, I would imagine. So did they eventually have this AGM? I mean, you'd have taken.
Well, I contacted headquarters, and because that was another thing, that they'd breached the rules in terms of you're meant to have so many CA meetings per year, and they hadn't done that. So this is why this was all kind of, so that they had to have this AGM, but this AGM was attended. Somebody was sent from headquarters to attend, to obviously just kind of make sure that the meeting went smoothly.
Yeah, in a direction that they was comfortable with. So when
I actually questioned who they sent, because they sent somebody who was quite friendly with somebody on the executive of the CA, and I was like, well, surely that's not somebody that's on the outside here.
I missed this when we were talking earlier. I didn't get this into my head. So basically what you've done is you've questioned it as a branch level, but your accusation, your questions were at the constituency level. Yeah, because it's their campaign. I get it. So when in your office it was running the campaign and it's somebody in your office, it's a step up. It's the whole. So how many branches are in a constituency?
I think 7.
Right.
I think 7.
So did you get any feedback from the other 6? Was there anything?
I mean, there were certainly people coming to me privately. I mean, I've got the WhatsApps and stuff to be like, yep, you're. And in fairness to one branch, and they did put a complaint in, and somebody did say within the meeting that money should be absolutely transparent, and of course it should be. So there was people, but in all honesty, these people, this kind of small 10 to 15 people, they held all the power in terms of the office bearer positions. You've got to remember as well, this was done at a period in time where it was all over Zoom. So when I spoke, they were able to mute me. They were able to shut me off. So it's not like it was in a normal meeting setting where you're in a room with somebody and you can just have your say. They were able to, this is how much time you're having. They deliberately put our report to the last. They time bound the meeting, which in my whole time in the SNP, there's never been a meeting time bound, but it was like, no, it's 60 minutes and it doesn't go over it.
Sorry, so they put you at the end of the agenda and the whole meeting's to take 60 minutes.
Yes.
So if it's 59 minutes and 30 seconds, your piece is getting 30 seconds. Wow.
And if they didn't like something I said, I'd be muted.
So this is end of 2020, obviously, beginning of 2021.
Lockdown, so it was all Zoom. So they were very much in control about the narrative and about, how they were running the meetings. And as I say, our report, so it was like every branch done their report, Aries was last. And then, as I say, it was time bound. So I was cut off. Yeah.
So how long did this go on this? Now, see, to be fair, at this point, although you found irregularities in the money, at this point, your concern at this point isn't the irregularities because you've not found them yet.
No.
You're still just questioning the fact that why did we put money into an individual's bank account and where is it? Yeah. Right.
So yeah, because genuinely, at that point in time, my main thing is why are we putting money, donations, into a personal bank account? And why, as the members, are we not getting to see those donations? So it wasn't about, at that point in time, actually, what caused me concern was their behaviour and how they responded to the questions that I was asking. Because I'm like, surely if there's nothing wrong here, there's no concerns, then it's just a perfectly legitimate question. Here's the answer, bish bash, done. But it was the way that they responded and how it got very personal towards my family and me, that I was like, hey, wait a wee minute. So at that point in time, obviously your election expenses are submitted to the local authority. Every candidate has to submit them, and you can pay to get a copy of them because your local authority keeps them for up to 2 years. So I paid for a copy of the election expenses, and that's when I started going through the election expenses, and then obviously looking at social media and seeing certain things that weren't declared. There was also another thing that had been brought up in another meeting where there was like a prepaid post thing done, but there was so that was actually put out in minutes of the election agent saying that they'd done that, because they were discussing not doing it for the council elections because it was quite a bad idea, because obviously opposition just fill it in, send it back with a load of crap, and you've got to pay for it. So it can be quite an expensive thing. So that was kind of discussed. So there was that, and then that obviously wasn't on the expenses that was lodged either. So it was just things like that, and it just started
question.
Yeah.
So just to clarify in my own head, so you've seen activity taking place on social media to raise funds. You've seen and been involved in a discussion where they were deciding whether or not to do a free post campaign.
Yeah.
And I take it that was decided to be done for the general, for the Holyrood election. It's Holyrood election, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2021, yeah.
So these are things that you're seeing playing in your face. There was some fundraising events there. We were going to do this campaign with the free post.
There was also a campaign debrief where the election agent said, this is what we spent within the campaign. And the figure that he said that was spent within the campaign, that was minuted, sent out as like that, this was the post final campaign, this is what was spent, this was the donations. And I think they said something like, if it, off the top of my head, I think it was like minus 2p was spent on the donations or something like that. But that figure is a completely different figure to what was officially lodged with the expenses that were lodged. Sure. So there were two different figures.
Yeah, you went through the sort of official figures which you got from the council.
Yeah.
So you're saying that they were different to the figures you were given at branch level?
Yes.
Wow. Yes. Right, so at this point, there's things going on, there's fundraising that you can see is evidently been done, but that doesn't show up in any accounts anywhere. That's at branch level or the second lot accounts that you got from the council. Yeah. So there's money being raised, which isn't showing up neither to those sources, which is their own books or the stuff that they've submitted for the campaign expenses. I know
they've just not declared them in the campaign expenses. So, for example, the prepaid post thing, it's not declared on the expenses, but it's minuted and discussed that's what we done within the campaign.
And that's not tying in with the accounts on any of the two.
Yes.
That's fantastically mental. So, no wonder they were concerned, because there's money being raised at events that you're seeing in front of you in social media that are not shown in any branch minutes, and are not shown in these the detailed accounts given and submitted to the Electoral Commission, which are then held by local council. Yeah. Wow. Right. So when do you decide? Because you've obviously put this complaint in, and it was just initially because of the account thing.
Well, at this point in time, I was just complaining internally. Yeah. I was kind of saying, like, look, what's going on here? Trying to sort it from like an in-house. This isn't right. My argument is, see if there's anything dodgy going on. See if that was any other party, we would be going off our heads.
You'd be shouting at them.
You would.
And look at the dirty Tories.
Yeah. And my argument is you've got to practice what you put. And I think this is where I can't stand it in terms of politics. And you've got folks standing up. Well, it's double standards. Like, you can have a go at another party for doing something, but we'll turn our blind eye to our own party doing it. And I just think that's wrong. I just think it's wrong. There is rules there for election for a reason, and it's so that everybody gets elected on a level playing field. Do you know what I mean? If we didn't have that money, that that cut off. You could have somebody with a lot of money spending God knows what to get elected. Do you know what I mean? It's just
Abramovich, instead of buying Chelsea, decides to become an MP, and he's just going to get their cause of dough. No, I get that. And I think one thing that annoys me and frustrates me as an outsider of the SNP is if SNP do something bad, see, as long as something that Westminster's done it a wee bit worse, then that's acceptable. When it's all right, because Westminster done worse. You know, this guy robbed £11,000 off his mobile phone roaming charges. Aye, but that Tory down there was 25 grand. You're like, well, no. They're looking at Hollywood now, and you've seen that from within. So you've got this, and it's building, because initially it was a one thing, it was a bank account, and then you're seeing these things that are happening on social media that were near in their books, and stuff that happened that was near the stuff that went to electoral commission. So when did you get to the point, and it sounds as if you were getting delayed and blocked, and object put in front of you to try and stop you getting to your answers. When did you get to the point to go, I'm going to go and pay money to get the actual records that were submitted to the Electoral Commission?
I think I'd already done that at that point in time, because that was how I knew that there was stuff not adding up. But I think, do you know what it was for us as a family? When my mum was elected and she was getting quite a lot of shit in the papers and stuff, you obviously go to, at that point in time, because there were quite a lot, it was 56 MPs that went down, nobody had ever been like an MP before, it was a whole different world that you were in. So you were taking your instruction from the SNP comms team and stuff like that. And very much mum was of the, it was any advice that was given was keep shut, remain quiet, it'll all blow over, right? And we done that. We took that advice, and that's exactly what we done. So in terms of the expenses and stuff like that, it was keep quiet, don't answer back. Because if you answer back, you look guilty and you look defensive. So just say nothing. But actually, by saying nothing, it was allowed to grow arms and legs. So I think at this point in time, I was like, a lot of people, and I hear this a lot within the independence movement, wished for Indy, like keep quiet for the cause. No, because see, if that is the cause, I don't want to be part of the cause, because it's wrong, right? And I think that's my biggest thing. If something's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter what it is, what organisation you're in, you should always challenge shitty behaviour. So I think I just got to a point, I was like, my name's getting tarnished here, my mum's getting tarnished, Chris is getting tarnished. I'm not putting up with this anymore. So I'm gonna challenge it, and I'm not remaining. These people don't deserve my silence anymore.
Mm-hmm. So from your initial, which was a group thing, we need to always bear in mind, your initial thing was not you standing up and going, "Yous are wrong." It was you and your group capacity as a group for the local SNP. See, from the initial complaint getting in to you just going, "Do you know what? This is bollocks. I can't be coping with this anymore," and pushing it further. What sort of timescale are we talking here, Shannon?
It was all within it was like about a year, I think, a year to maybe a year and a half.
What was that like to live through?
Horrific. Awful. I was signed off work for 6 months with stress. I had to go to counselling. I got to a point that I actually probably couldn't go on social media. I get really, really upset about reading stuff about my family and about my mum that wasn't true. For a while there, it really, really, really bothered me. Really bothered me. Because I think the thing is as well, the unionists would jump on it too. Obviously, it's an opposition. Do you know what I mean? But and I think that's it. You kind of expect the unionists to kind of come for you and do you know what I mean? But it just, at that point in time, it just felt like it was coming from all directions, and it was too much. And I think people sometimes forget in politics that people are humans, and actually people do have feelings, and what is read and what you see about people is not always nice, and it actually affects people.
Mm-hmm. And when it's, as you say, if it was a unionist, somebody that's a crackpot, and we get crackpot unionists, we get crackpot nationalists, but if it was somebody like that picking on it and running with it and wanting to use it as a tool against the SNP, you could understand that. Yeah. But when it's people that you've probably shared meetings with, you've shared campaigns with, you've been in the street fighting for a cause with, that's got to hurt.
But it's also people that my mum's helped out. You know, there's a counsellor that didn't get past vetting, and my mum was contacted headquarters and you know helped her to appeal the decision. Who completely shat on her. It's always been kind of people that have been, you know, we've always welcomed them in. We've always been, and I think that's the thing. For that, to this day, I genuinely don't know what we've done to these people to behave the way that they did towards us. I honestly don't know.
Because this happened before you started asking questions, right? So what we've established now is you've got activities that happened for fundraising that wasn't recorded. You've got the one that just beggars belief to me, whether there was anything criminal behind it or not. The fact that you leave yourself open by putting emails out asking for money to be paid into a personal bank account, that's just bonkers. And then there was activities. You're now saying that once you got the actual figures that were put into the Electoral Commission, they were different from the figures that were given to the branch.
Yeah.
Can you explain these things? Why would there be discrepancies?
Well, just they obviously haven't declared stuff. I don't know because I haven't seen inside that bank account, so I don't know exactly what went into that bank account. I don't know. My guess would be, and my opinion is that we've probably overspent a wee bit.
Yeah, that's interesting because you're automatically thinking at one point, if there's money going into somebody's bank account, then it might be going into somebody's back pocket, but that isn't necessarily the case.
No, and I genuinely don't think that is the case at all, and I think that that's important. I don't think for 1 minute that people got donations and it was getting pocketed personally by people. Absolutely not. I'm not saying that at all.
There's rules and regulations on election campaigning.
But there was definitely something.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there could be three things, right? There could be somebody's put money in their pocket, which you're quite happy to put your hand up and say, "You don't think that's happened." No. There's been gerrymandering of figures used in an election campaign, which is serious, or there's nothing wrong. But the nothing wrong would be.
But this was my argument all along. See if there is nothing, because at this point I never accused anybody of anything. I was simply asking questions.
Yeah. And if there was
if there's nothing there, just show me them.
Aye, we can move on.
And then exactly. Yeah. But it was never ever shown.
Yeah. So option 3 is probable, never happened. It's probable.
But at that point in time, obviously these people didn't know I had the election expenses that were submitted.
Of course, they don't know that you've. Right.
So they didn't know that I had that. They didn't know that I had obviously screenshots of stuff that was put on social media that they've obviously used within their campaign that I now know has not been declared on those expenses sheets. Yeah. So they didn't know that at that time. Mm-hmm. They just knew that I was asking questions.
Aye, good point. So.
And I keep saying I was asking questions. My branch was asking questions. It wasn't just me.
Yeah. Aye, that's true. And the people within your branch, did they, as the thing was going on and no responses and, almost getting blocked to get answers, were they as concerned as you were going forward? Is this thing journeyed on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of them left the party.
Seriously? Yeah. Before you?
Yeah, they left the party because they'd just had enough. Oh. We were just getting blocked at every opportunity. The emails back and forward to headquarters. I get told that I was rehashing stuff, and it was very much, I'm out to cause trouble. I'm a troublemaker. I'm the problem. And
it's a new word for that I don't fully understand. Is it gaslighting?
Yeah.
So there's all these new vocabulary now that's out that I don't get. But do you feel you were gaslighted? And was that pride?
They were very good at what they'd done. Like, see members locally, like that maybe aren't as active. You know, you get that in every political party, that you've got members that obviously pay their subs to a party, but they don't attend branch meetings, for example, or whatever, and they're not that active. But this group of people done an absolute. I mean, they were good at what they done in terms of tarnishing me. Like, very good. Yeah.
Wow. And then, so before
I even wrote a letter to Nicola Sturgeon, and I think it was like a 9-page letter.
Did you get a response?
Nah.
Where did you send it?
I sent it to her office and I said that it was for private and confidential. I put a picture on my Instagram of me posting it in the letterbox down the road. Because at that point I'd just hit like breaking point with all this stuff and like the shit that was going on, and I was just like, surely to God, you know, because this is what bugged me a lot about the SNP. It was always like the Be Kind campaign, and you can't pick and choose when you allow bullying to happen and when you don't. And they allowed bullying to happen because that's what it was. It was bullying.
Yeah.
And no, it was never challenged. Yeah. And that's what really bothers me. I mean, throughout this whole period, I mean, even like my mum's elections and stuff like that, we suffered miscarriages and stuff. And I genuinely, it was down to stress. I was stressed about the whole situation. It was absolutely horrific. When I say I hit rock bottom, I hit rock bottom. Like I couldn't get out of my bed. I was depressed. I was like, it seriously affected my life.
Incredible. Incredibly sad, because it's all right, I think, me having those theories about how the SNP operate as a unionist who is a fan of the SNP. And I don't take any joy, by the way, I hope you appreciate this, from hearing that I'm right, because the fact that I'm right means there's victims in this, there's casualties in this.
Yeah, I think that, I think it's also important for me to say that I don't think every SNP member is like that. No. And I do think that there is a large group within the SNP, even to this day, are blissfully unaware.
And possibly blissfully want to be unaware.
And I think as well, we've managed to get ourselves trapped in that. So anything that maybe comes out about the SNP that maybe somebody's questioning or challenging, it's like unionist media. And we've kind of got dangerous with that, where we can't be like, well, no, actually, wait a wee minute, can we not just question it?
Yeah, it's tinfoil hat stuff getting, isn't it? So it's really getting the conspiracies. I mean, I laugh, right? Because I see some news outlets, particularly TV news outlets, where I think they seem pretty comfortable with the notion of independence. Yeah. But then they say one thing that's wrong, and suddenly all these crackpots online, I know Twitter's no real life, but they're like, oh, that's that Tory rag, and you're like, that's that? Twitter's name. Aye. But, although you're now confirming what I've felt about the SNP for a while. I don't take any pleasure in being right, because there's casualties here, and you're the casualty here, because it's affected you in a tremendously bad way. And it seemed to me as an outsider that there was this movement within the party, and you've sort of knocked it in the head with, you just wished for Indy. Yeah. I ain't writing any organisation, especially when you're trying to paint the picture of being the sort of transparent, caring thing. They can't even look after their own.
I mean, I think that's probably one thing I've been really, really disappointed with some members that I thought were our family friends. I think over the years you build up quite a good relationship with some people, and you think that you think they're your pal. Tommy was rumbling there. I just realised probably caught in the mic.
I can edit it out if it did.
But yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest things for me. That I think when you're campaigning like that, weekend in, weekend out, you do build up quite a relationship with some people. You become quite close with them. And I presented some of the evidence and stuff to certain people within the party, and they just were like, yeah, but just kind of turned a blind eye to it. And the amount of people as well, the amount of members that have came to us as a family and said, it's shocking the way you've been treated, it's shocking the behaviour. I've had WhatsApps after meetings, because like, let's face it, like these men were like 3 men in their 60s smearing and laughing at me in a Zoom meeting, like trying to intimidate me. And I'd like WhatsApp messages been like, you held your own, you done well there, you done better than I could. Like, people were seeing it, but they just weren't challenging it. Yeah. And my argument is like, being silent, you're complicit. Like, do you know what I mean?
And the thing that's mad here is, and I'm still going into your mum's story, because your mum's story is maybe a story your mum wants to tell, right? But your mum was telling me a similar story where she was in a NEC, National Executive Committee meeting, and questioned Nicola Sturgeon and got the exact same as you're getting. So it's not unique to branch level. In fact, if any of the branches are trying to make things better, but then you get to constituency level, that's where they start closing ranks, and even going right up to national level. And this seems to be a stream that's running right through them, that it's indie at all costs. So if we need to sell our morals to keep this thing going, because they believe SNP is the only vehicle for that, which perversely I don't even think is a vehicle for it, but that's the way it's presented. And it's indie at all costs, therefore it must be SNP at all costs, therefore it must be Nicola at all costs, it must be Hamza at all costs. And it seems to just be this horrific thing that now with the information you're giving me, is running from national level right the way down to constituency level. But there seem to be people at branch level that are actually no bad and understand and get it, and they're like you have done.
Yeah, and I do genuinely believe, even at conferences, like the kind of later conferences that I attended, there is members that want to change things, and they genuinely believe that they can in the SNP. Yeah. And you know, I think I said this to you on the phone the other day. It's a bit like that domestic violence relationship, and I genuinely do think it is a bit like that. People have put in so much into the SNP or into a political party for like so many years. You are attached to it. You're invested in it, and there's all these red flags popping up, but you're like, oh no, and you know, it's always that kind of other chance, but it's like, and you know what's happening isn't right, but you're in it, and you know, you've been kind of promised this end goal of independence. Do you know what I mean? And it's very difficult. I mean, even when I left, despite all the shit that I went through, I was genuinely upset to leave the party.
When did you actually leave the party?
Last year, last October, I think it was.
So we're sort of 9 months in. But we're not at the end of the story, because you got to a point where you felt, I'm getting nowhere here. Yeah. And there's nothing, I can't even get an answer to a simple question. Yeah. And you reckon, what did that take, about 18 months? You getting battered up the park and blocked and getting nowhere and getting...
Yeah, I mean, don't quote me on that. I think roughly it was certainly was like a long period.
Yeah, maybe more than a year.
Yeah, definitely more than a year. It went on, back and forward.
We've been trying to do this, you know, and again, we need to reiterate, it's not you, that's a branch doing this. And you're probably the last one standing, but at this point, because I've had enough and buggered off, right? So, but the complaint, and not the questions at this point, because you can't complain about something until you have information to complain about. You're getting absolutely nowhere. But you said at one point you had the constituency accounts, or, you know, account of that campaign. When did you get that information?
That would have came with the EGM.
Which eventually happened.
Yeah, that would have came with that, because that was them obviously presenting the accounts for the year, which was done every year, obviously. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, like, there was no questions, like, it's an outsider. I think, again, I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head, but it was like something like maybe 2,000, it was like £1,000 to £2,000 within that account for that year. That was an election year. Like, there's just no way.
So, an income?
Yes.
The constituency, not the branch.
Yeah, the constituency, there's just no way. Obviously, it's an election year, so you would be expecting all your donations, your campaigns and stuff and whatever that's happened to be in that account. So, but obviously it didn't, because it went into this personal account that, to this day, to my understanding, nobody's seen.
Right, so your actual constituency bank account you're talking about here only had £1,000 to £2,000 movement in a year. Yeah. So there was all this campaigning money that nobody's been able to see, right? So that's got to send shockwaves and people asking even more questions.
Well, surprisingly, not enough folk asking questions. That's the sad thing.
But at this point, you've got the proper figures from the commission at this point, so you know it's bollocks. You know they've spent X amount because it's there, right? And you're not letting on at this time. You're keeping that private to try and get them to give you justifiable answers. Is that where you're going?
I think it was round about at this point in time that I decided to, because an email had went out to the Constituency Association that was basically, I think it said something like I'd shouted profanities and stuff like this in the meeting, which was utter lies. That did not happen. So I'd contacted my lawyer to basically say, I want this, I want these minutes, because these minutes went out to the CA Constituency Association, which was like at that around about that time it was like 1,200 to 1,300 members.
Who's made this accusation? This accusation is there in the minutes?
It's in the minutes.
No way.
It's in the minutes that I was shouting profanities in this meeting, which just, I've got the recording of the meeting, but again, they didn't know that at that point in time. I didn't shout, like, it was absolute crap.
This is still Zoom meeting time.
Yeah. But these minutes were going out to all these members, and like that's what I'm saying. They were very clever in using their platform to make me out to be this troublemaker. They were very good at destroying my reputation. And any time I kind of tried to respond or retaliate, it was like, oh, she's causing trouble, or do you know what I mean? It was like, and I've found that a lot with a lot of people. It's like with these people, they're very quick to put accusations on on social media about me and my family, but when I respond, it's like, oh, here she is again, the hothead. I'm referred to as the attack dog. My mum's attack dog, like, by them all. My tummy rumbling again. So like they're very good at this persona about me. So at this point in time, I was like, no, enough's enough. I'm writing a lawyer's letter to the CA. So I got my lawyer to write a letter to the CA to basically say that these minutes weren't accurate, they weren't true, it wasn't a true reflection of the meeting. I wanted them retracted, and I wanted an apology. So then at that point, it went to Scott Martin, who is the SNP lawyer. He wrote back. My lawyer then wrote back to say, well, actually, my client has a recording of the meeting. And that was the first time that they probably knew at that point in time that I'd recorded stuff. It then came back that I was accused that I'd breached GDPR because I'd secretly recorded these meetings. But there's like loopholes within the law and whatever, that if you feel in danger, then you can record. And if it's of public interest, which I would argue it's of public interest.
I think saying no Zoom calls, normally the person hosting it would record it anyway.
Not necessarily.
They can record it. Yeah. And did they record it?
I don't know. Certainly our branch meetings that we had on as a branch, we would say at the beginning, we're recording this for minuting purposes or whatever.
Yeah, it makes it easier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So how did that go when you with your conversations now at national level to say, this is bollocks and you're trying to card me up, and this lawyer gets involved? Where did that lead to?
So the lawyer got involved. As I say, the lawyer wrote the letter. Then at that point in time, that was the first time as well that my lawyer had indicated that I had concerns about the finances.
Okay, and this is right at national level?
Yeah, so this was to the lawyer to basically say, because if I remember rightly, the SNP lawyer had given me a time frame and a date as to when I was to delete these recordings by, or else I would be further. But they didn't know at this point in time that I'd actually contacted the Electoral Commission and the police with regards to the finances thing. So I wasn't deleting any recordings, because obviously there was stuff in those that was discussed in those meetings that would have backed up what I was saying about the finances. So it was also going to be linked to that.
And right, and this is us getting to a pretty intriguing part of it, because I know the answer to the question I'm about to ask you, and that was, what did you do first actually, police or electoral commission, or did you do them both at the same time? So
I was kind of back and forward, and I think this is partly where I'm kind of wanting, and this is why I'm doing this today. So I went to the Electoral Commission and I was like, I'm wanting advice on this, like who do, like, this is what's happened. The Electoral Commission, I spoke to the manager of like who deals with the whole of Scotland, and it's quite complicated, as everything else is that you're trying to challenge. So if it's national spend within a campaign, so in an election you have a national spend, so the party has a national spend, and there's no limit on the national spend within a party election, right? So anybody, SNP, Tory, Labour, whatever, can spend nationally, and it can go into the national fund as long as it's not related to an individual candidate.
So
do you get what I'm saying? So
you want to put a bus on the street that says vote SNP, that's limitless.
Yeah.
But you want to say...
But for example, you couldn't have that, if that bus rolled into the ward or the constituency that I'm in and I've got a rosette on with my name on it, then that could potentially be linked to my expenses.
Because you're utilising that bus.
Yes, right? But whereas if it's generic, do you know what I mean, and it's national. Yeah. So I had to establish that first, which obviously I did, and it was obviously established that this was linked to an individual's candidate spend. So then I've got again the emails that it's a police matter.
Seriously, state to the police, not the Electoral Commission. Don't investigate it. If you've got any concerns, that's where you need to go. Matter. Wow.
So I'd contacted the police, and again it was a bit ridiculous too. So we'd kind of explained and we'd said that it would probably need to be somebody specialised to come out, because it's not just your kind of ordinary police complaint. But at that point in time, there was like a new system come in when you were reporting something to the police, and it was like went to like an operator, and the operator decided. It just was all a bit. So anyway, 2 standard police guys come out, and they were as lovely, and listened to what I had to say and whatever. But they were like, this is way above our pay. Like, so I was like, right, okay. So then that was fine. So then he went in, and then I had to go into the police station and do a statement. So I'd done a big statement with the police, and I showed them what I'd had and stuff like that. And at that point in time, it had been put over to the CID. So the CID were looking into it. And this is where I've hit the brick wall. With your election expenses that are submitted to your local authority, they keep them for up to 2 years. So while all this was going on, obviously that I was trying to deal with it internally, I was aware in my head that I had a 2-year window that I thought before those that paperwork was destroyed, that I could action it, right? So I was coming up to the end of that 2-year window. So that's why obviously I was like, it's now or never, I need to action it. So I'd obviously it was, but the police had then got back to me and basically said that it was time barred, and it was time barred by a year under the Representation of the People Act. I think I would need to double check that, but I'm sure it was that. So I only really had a year to report it.
When you were under the impression it was 2 years, yes, because that's the amount of time that the council must keep the record of the expenses.
Yes. Okay. So the police had said in the thing that although there appeared to be discrepancies, that it would be for the branch to explain how those discrepancies. So I think it's definitely something that needs to have more education on it. There is rules for election expenses for a reason, but it was very complicated. I mean, I was back and forward for weeks, Electoral Commission, police, because the police were saying it wasn't them, it was an Electoral Commission. It was like a yo-yo at times, and I'm like, you're telling me it's the police are telling me it's you. Like, what is going on here? So yeah, it was very time consuming, very challenging. And then obviously to finally feel like I was getting somewhere. I mean, I was under them. I didn't realise, I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't realise that any offence was time barred in Scotland. I didn't think there was a time barred for it.
Yeah, you'd be amazed. Probably, I would guess the majority of crimes have got a time bar when it's not like murder. Right, but things like fraud, etc. I think there's always time bars.
See, I didn't know. I didn't think there was.
Listen, it's not unusual, but I think as a member of the public, when you're faced with the 2-year thing for the accounts, then you would kind of.
Well, my argument would be why do the local authority keep it for 2 years if you can only use it what's the purpose? What's the purpose of having that if you can?
After a year, it's worthless anyway. Yeah. But I think the year is quite a short time. Now, a stupid question, but I take it people who are able to give you legal advice have looked into this and they're verified that that's correct. Yeah. That's frightening, isn't it? It's quite a short
Yeah. So I actually, because of that, I was like, well, I'm not happy with this. So I've actually contacted the list MSP for here, and obviously presented everything that needed, and basically, so she looked into it for me, and really, I was asking her, like, what do we need, and it was basically change legislation. We need to change legislation.
Aye, so when did you find out about this time bar thing?
I think it would have been November. My tummy.
Just 23.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's the journey been like since then to now? And what have you been trying to just find if there's a loophole or other avenues you can take your...
To be honest with you, I took a bit of a break from it because I needed to. It can take over your life. It can be quite consuming. And I think for me, it was like these people have done us so wrong. And it was becoming a bit kind of, I don't know. I didn't want to be unhealthy. I didn't want an unhealthy. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want it affecting my life the way it was, because it was affecting me. And it's very difficult when you see these people that have been absolutely horrific to you, that, you know, you've got this kind of stuff that you want answers to, but they're all over social media as elected members, and you know, they're in the paper every, and you're like, it's almost like it's just constant. Do you know what I mean? You're constantly seeing them.
And do these people that are elected, have they had any contact with you about these questions, or has it all been dealt with by their sort of backroom staff and their campaign staff?
What do you mean?
When you're raising these concerns, it's about Mr. X's campaign, right? And you're putting it into this.
They're currently elected, so they wouldn't challenge it because it's them that it's about.
Aye, but you're not had any contact with you about it. And these are people you've known.
Yeah.
And they know the questions you're asking, I'd imagine, because they're seeing the reaction.
Oh, they've been in the meetings that I've asked the questions. Yeah, absolutely.
And now just go down to, well...
And obviously I put out my statement on social media when I left the SNP, on Twitter, and I think it got quite a good... It was a good couple of thousand. Like, I mean, it was like, I think over like, I want to say like 53,000.
Right, quite a big exposure.
So they'll have seen it. They'll all have seen it. Yeah.
So...
And in that statement, I said that I'd raised concerns about financial and about a personal bank account. So it's not like we're not, you know what I mean?
I would be naive to think they didn't. Yeah. And these are people you've known for a long time. Yeah. No, it's an incredible story, and I think it just confirms the feelings that a lot of people have had about how the party's ran. I'm not aware of anybody else that's had such evidence to put out that this is how it's run at local level. Has it happened before? Or has people that have had the concerns been able to? Because you'll not be the only constituency area that will have had issues like this. But have you heard of anybody else that's actually took it as far as they can, or have they all just been able to be quietened down by internal politics? I
don't think anybody that I know of certainly has had the evidence that I've had, and obviously I was very smart, very early on. It was like, and I think a lot of them thought that I was being silent, and I actually think as well, for a long time, this group of individuals thought she'd have said something by now. Do you know what I mean? I think for a while they got quite comfortable with she'd have done something by now. But actually, I was working behind the scenes. I was building my evidence. I was building, because I know very much of, I don't say anything that I can't back up. And if what I'm saying is false and lies, then take me to court.
Yeah, and I think what you've done is a lot of people react instantly to things, and they want to react instantly, and especially when it's a situation that you've been in. I've been in similar situations myself, where you feel sometimes the wave of stuff coming at you is just constant and non-stop, right? Yeah. To then go, I've got this bit of information, and I've got this recording, and I've got this evidence. Yeah. To not actually go, fuck off, to not show your hand must have taken a lot of patience?
Oh, it was difficult. It was difficult because I'm not going to lie and say that there wasn't maybe certain things in that time period that I was absolutely fucking raging with. You know, you would come out a meeting where, as I say, of 63 men at 60 plus years of age sniggering and trying to intimidate me, and you know everybody else remaining silent. It's infuriating. I mean, as I say, I don't get intimidated a lot by a lot, like, easily. You know what I mean? I'm quite a strong individual. I'll hold my own. And I've always been brought up as well. My mum's very much, if you see something wrong, you challenge it. So I've always been that type of person, and I think that's where I maybe can't understand these people that don't challenge it, because there has been a number of members that have seen this played out and they've turned a blind eye to it, and I think, how can you do that?
The thing is, if there's 7 areas in this constituency and there's 7 areas in every constituency, and we've got...
Well, not now, because actually, since we've left and whatever, I think 3 of the branches have amalgamated together, which would tell you, which is very interesting locally, because locally the SNP here used to have some, and the Ayr branches were very well run, very well attended, and good support. To the fact that they've had to move them into 3 just kind of tells you the state that they're in.
Aye, but if you consider the amount of constituencies we've got, and they've all got a number of, and probably decreasing, but at some point I've had loads of constituencies with loads of, therefore, local groups, and you'll not be the only one. But to be the only one that's actually got to this point and been able to go, do you know what, here's the proof, here's all the stuff, actually decide what you want about that party, because you've got no legal route anymore. So they've got away with it in a legal sense. And
that's the most frustrating thing for me, because it's like, and I genuinely believe that the party were literally leading me up a garden path for that whole point in time, because it was like, I mean, I've got all the emails, it was like back and forward, and it's like, actually now I think, were you doing that on purpose? Did you know that this was time barred? Because
that's shocking.
Do you know?
This stuff you were telling me about putting it on the agenda, the last thing, and we're only having the meeting for an hour, so it means you've got to wait to the next meeting to get your point, and all that nonsense. But no, it's a worrying situation. It just cements probably what a lot of people have thought about the SNP for a long time, and that's not just unionists. I can see a swing away from nationalists, a swing away from the SNP. They're thinking, no, you're not doing anything right. But this is just, it's disgusting. And by the way, see, if whether it was the Tory party, the Lib Dems, Labour, Alba, it wouldn't matter. For a party to do this, it's bad. But when it's a party that's run Holyrood for 17 years telling us everybody else is bad, it's pretty disappointing. So before we hit the stop button, is there anything that you've not put out, you've not spoke about, anything that we've not covered that you wanted to cover in this podcast?
I don't think so. I think I just want to say that, you know, for me, choosing to do this podcast is basically me finally getting my side of the story out.
Yeah.
For a long, long time, my family has been completely tarnished.
Yeah.
Our reputation has been damaged. And let's face it, shit sticks. It does.
Some of it does.
Yeah. And you know, some of the stuff that they've used, shit sticks. I mean, even this campaign that my mum's now in, we're still going with the SNP candidate just now about honesty and integrity, and it's very clear who they're digging at, as if Corrie's not honest and she doesn't have any integrity. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's that constant we slide digs continually, but they're used to it, because, as I say, we were silent all the time, and we just kind of got on with it. And I think there's an element as well, as a family, we're partly to blame and how this has played out, because we allowed it to go on for so long. We remained silent, because I think we genuinely just thought it would all go away, and it just didn't. And I think this is just my opportunity to be like, well, actually, no. Mum has never had anything wrong with her expenses. She was never under investigation. You saw the letter yourself. the whole expenses with the Chick Brody MSP thing was a business support thing, which wasn't just her expenses. She was also paying staff, which is a sitting MSP just now who could clarify that, but chooses not to. You know, there's just a lot of stuff that's just.
So in the election that's happening on the 4th of July, is it kind of fair to say you're no voting SNP?
No.
Do you think you'll ever vote for them again?
No.
It's not scuppered your dreams and your aspirations for independence, though.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, I joined Alba, obviously, and Alba is what the old SNP used to be. And I genuinely do, like, you go to conferences of Alba now and it's like back to that kind of time where I was saying about my mum's campaign and stuff like that. It's that buzz again. It's that kind of nice environment to be in. And yeah, and in terms of Alex Salmond, I just think there's for me, there's just no man that's like him. He's just...
No, we were speaking to your mum earlier, you know my feelings on him. I hated the guts of him for 2012 to 14 because I thought he was running a campaign that would have won. But since then, particularly since he took a step back for SNP, I just watch his videos now and he's great value. He's a clever man.
Very, very clever.
A very clever man.
Politically, he's like...
Shrewd. Yeah. And you need to be. Yeah. And, you know, talking to people who worked with him, and they all say the same, that he was able to cross parties and get people to agree on things, and that's what you've got to do as a politician. Yeah. But what followed didn't. They had no wish to deal with anybody, and that's us getting off on a different thing. But look, can't thank enough for your time, Shannon. Your story is incredible. I just knew there was something that you posted when I initially contacted you, which was probably 2 months ago. I just seen something and I went, there's something there, there's something all right here. And then you came back to me, obviously, once things had settled down for you and you decided to do it. So I can't thank you enough for doing that.
I just think we need to get away from this whole kind of, you know, it's very interesting, the group of ones that I'm kind of talking about today, they always kind of use this whole politics is toxic, and I think it's the people like them that's made politics toxic, and we need to get away from that. And actually, I think this is just the start of, well, I'm being very clear here in terms of me and my family going forward. I'm not putting up with the shit anymore. I will challenge it and I will ask, do you know what I mean, to back up what you're saying. And if you can't back up what you're saying, then don't say it, because it's not true. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not coming on here but like, we're perfect. We're not perfect. Do you know what I mean? But if we've done something wrong, give us evidence. Let's see it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing as well. It's like, I've always wanted to sit down in a room with these people. That's why they wanted them on Zoom for so long. Let's have the chat about, you know, who's corrupt and who's not. And we'll soon find out who is.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating story. I'm sure your feelings are not unique to this area and, you know, the branch, that you were in. But it's encouraging that you've went this far, to be fair. And I think the thing that's really unfortunate is, but for a stupid bit of legislation with the time bar, this could have been, I'm not suggesting people.
But I think that's the important thing, probably, that we do need to. I mean, obviously we're in the middle of a campaign and stuff like that. I've got 2 young kids at home. Life's quite difficult, busy. But once it's kind of settled down, it's definitely something I will be looking into. Because once again, it's a legislation in place that suits politicians because they can do whatever, but they've got a year to do you know what I mean? Potentially they could do whatever they wanted with it.
As long as you kick it up the park for a year, they're off scot-free. So what's the point? And a year's not a long time. Yeah, it's not. Is there no avenue to get this looked at Westminster? Is the Electoral Commission the only route you have to look at these things to get anywhere near a government department?
As far as I know, yeah. Because as I say, I was in contact with the Electoral Commission and the, back and forward with the police for weeks, months.
You'd have thought if there was something, they would have told you.
Yeah, and I just kind of, because actually the police at the point in time, when it went to the CID, there was talk about it being linked to branch form.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think they were, but I knew at that point in time it wasn't going to be linked to that.
Well, they might have put it into that investigation.
I just think that it's maybe just been a case that it's never been, I don't know, it's something that they've not had to deal with before. So I just kind of think that, but you know, and that was the ordinary police guys that said that, and I'm like, I don't think it would be anything to do with that.
Well, there are similarities because this money that's been taken as donations has been dealt with. So, you know, they might have been the people to even look at it and say, oh, that give other people guidance just because they've been doing it for so long. They've been doing it for 3 years now. And then potentially a misuse of, which would need to be proven one way or the other. But no, it's fair play to you, Shannon, for your tenacity and dealing with this. The way you've dealt with it's been fantastic. The way you've not just shouted all your information, which must have been bloody hard when you're getting attacked and you've got information that you could just have went, well, look at that. You've not done that. You played a blinder, but unfortunately, the only thing that's scuppered you is a stupid bit of legislation.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I would have played an absolute blinder had that time bar not been in place.
But you would, you know, I think using common sense and logic, when these documents have to be retained for 2 years, that would kind of suggest you've got 2 years to do this. Yeah.
It was gotten. It was gotten.
But for the grace of God, they got half of it. That's what it is. It's as innocent as OJ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I think for me, and I think this is why it was important to do this podcast as well. The reality is there's an election coming up just now who the same team are out.
The same thing.
There was an election, there'll be the Hollywood election in 2026. It's important that people start having this side of the story and seeing it so that actually come the next elections, you know, we can maybe start, and you better believe I'm watching your expenses like a hawk this time.
Right. Well, listen, thanks very much for your time and you know, inviting me down to your home today. It was good fun meeting your mother. That was before we started recording. That was good to get a chat with her. And the irony is, I've spoke to more Alba MPs during this campaign than anybody.
Well, she's not an MP.
She's a candidate. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. I've spoke to 2 Alba candidates now during this, because there are no MPs. Nobody's an MP. No. And it's pretty bizarre for a unionist, isn't it? But, you know, it is what it is.
But I think that's what we need more of, genuinely. And I think that you know, that is, like, we need to have more civilised conversations, more debates, because people can agree to disagree and you can kind of meet in the middle ground and go from there, you know? Yeah. And I think we've lost that in politics.
100%. And if we can make Scotland a better place by unionists and nationalists working together to improve Scotland, we can leave the constitutional questions to an argument, you know, after that, or, you know, at the side of that. But we've not been able to do that for 10 years. We've just been fighting each other. That's complete bollocks, if you ask me. Yeah. So, no, thanks very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed that video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, consider subscribing to the channel and share this around people you think it may be interesting. But most importantly of all, for everybody, apart from the SNP, the people that have ruined Shannon's life for a short period and what's remaining of their cult, everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.